The storm was merciless, slashing against my skin as I stumbled down the empty suburban street. My birthday dress clung to me like a cruel reminder of the party that had ended in humiliation. In my trembling hands, I clutched a flimsy plastic grocery bag, my stepfather's twisted gift, my entire life stuffed into cheap crumpled fabric, tears mixed with the rain, blinding me until the glow of headlights seared through the darkness. A sleek black car screeched to a halt, inches from where I stood frozen in the storm. The tinted window slid down with a smooth hum. Inside sat a man in a tailored suit, his presence steady, commanding. He leaned forward, his voice cutting through the roar of thunder. "Jessica Monroe," he said, locking eyes with me, "your true father ordered me to find you." I staggered back, my heart pounding. My real father, the man my mother never dared to talk about, the man I thought was gone forever. And in that instant, my life, the lies, the betrayals, the silence, split open. But to understand how I ended up in the storm with nothing but a plastic bag and a stranger's impossible words, you have to go back. Back to the small two-story house in suburban Boston, Massachusetts, where I grew up under the shadow of Conrad Caldwell, my stepfather. To the world, Conrad was the image of respectability, a stern accountant who worked hard, provided, and ran the house with military precision. But behind closed doors, he made sure I never forgot one thing. I wasn't his blood, I was an outsider. "Stand up straight when I'm talking to you," he'd say at dinner, his voice never raising above a controlled volume that somehow felt more threatening than a shout. "A girl with your background needs to learn proper manners." My background, as if my existence before him was a stain to be scrubbed away. My mother, Martha, had remarried when I was 10, after years of struggling alone. She thought Conrad would bring us stability, security. Instead, she slowly disappeared into his shadow, her once bright laugh fading until I could barely remember its sound. "Just don't argue with him, Jessica," she'd whisper when I'd come to her room crying after another one of Conrad's cutting remarks. "Keep the peace. It's better this way." Better for whom, I wanted to ask. But the hollow look in her eyes stopped me every time. Our house was pristine, cream-colored, walls without a single family photo, furniture arranged at perfect angles, floors you could eat off. But there was no warmth, no life, just Conrad's rules, piling up like invisible walls around me. "You left your textbook on the coffee table," he'd say, holding the offending item between two fingers as if it carried disease. "This isn't a library, Jessica. This is a home. My home. Never our home. Never my home." School became my sanctuary. I threw myself into every activity, every club, anything to delay my return to Conrad's kingdom. I made friends with girls who had fathers who hugged them, who attended their soccer games, who called them princess without a hint of mockery. I pretended their normalcy didn't wound me. Mrs. Brennan, my English teacher junior year, was the first to notice. "You write beautifully, Jessica," she told me after class one day, my essay on family dynamics clutched in her hand. "But there's so much pain here. Are you okay?" I nearly broke then, nearly told her everything. But what was there to tell? Conrad never hit me. He never starved me or locked me in closets. His weapons were words, glances, silences, things no one could see, things that left no marks, except the ones carved inside me. "I'm fine," I said, "just being dramatic. Writer's instinct, you know." She didn't believe me. I could tell by the way her eyes lingered on mine, searching. But she nodded and let me go. At home, as my 18th birthday approached, a tiny, foolish hope began to flicker inside me. Maybe adulthood would change things. Maybe once I was legally an adult, Conrad would see me differently. Maybe we could start fresh. "I was thinking," I ventured one evening at dinner, 2 weeks before the big day, "maybe we could have a small party here. Just a few friends from school. I could cook and clean up afterward, of course." Conrad's fork paused halfway to his mouth. He looked at me as if I'd suggested hosting a rave. "Your birthday," he said slowly, setting his fork down with deliberate care. "Yes," I replied, heat rising to my face. "I'll be 18. A strange smile crossed his lips. 18, he echoed. Then, to my shock, "Fine, you can have your party." My mother's head snapped up, surprise evident in her expression before she quickly masked it. "Really?" I couldn't believe it. "Thank you. Consider it a milestone," Conrad said, returning to his meal, a significant one. Looking back, I should have recognized the threat in his words, the cruel anticipation. But I was too busy imagining, for once, having friends in our sterile living room, bringing life and laughter into the cold space. Too busy believing that maybe, just maybe, Conrad was finally accepting me. For the next 2 weeks, I planned every detail. I invited only my closest friends. Emily, who'd been my best friend since 7th grade, Zach, our class president with the kindest smile, Leah, who shared my love of obscure indie films, and Marcus, the quiet genius who tutored me through calculus. I chose a simple menu I could prepare myself. Homemade pizza. Conrad's one indulgence was his pizza stone. A salad with Mom's secret dressing, and a birthday cake I'd baked the night before. Nothing fancy, nothing that would give Conrad reason to criticize. The day before my birthday, I caught my mother slipping a small wrapped package into her dresser drawer. "Is that?" I began, hovering in her doorway. She jumped, guilt flashing across her face. "Just a little something for tomorrow." It was the first time in years she'd gotten me a gift without Conrad's approval. I pretended not to notice the fear that followed her small rebellion. "Thanks, Mum," I whispered, and left before Conrad could catch us conspiring. That night, I lay awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling. One more day, and I'd be an adult. One more day, and maybe something would shift in this house. One more day, and maybe I'd finally belong. I had no idea how right and how terribly wrong I was. My 18th birthday dawned bright and clear, a perfect October day in Boston. The trees along our street had turned brilliant shades of orange and red, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of fall through my open window. For once, it seemed like even nature was celebrating with me. I spent the morning in a state of nervous excitement, preparing the food, cleaning the already spotless house, and arranging a small cluster of decorations in the dining room. Nothing extravagant, just a few balloons and a happy birthday banner carefully positioned where they wouldn't offend Conrad's aesthetic sensibilities. "Don't go overboard," my mother cautioned, helping me set the table. Her hands trembled slightly as she arranged the silverware in perfect rows. "Remember, this is still Conrad's house." "I know, Mom," I assured her, though a part of me wanted to argue that it was supposed to be our house too, but I swallowed the words. Today wasn't the day for confrontations. Today was for celebration, for possibility. Conrad had left early for work, barely acknowledging the day's significance with more than a cursory nod over breakfast. But his absence was a gift in itself, allowing me to prepare without his critical gaze following my every move. By 6 o'clock, everything was ready. I'd changed into a simple blue dress I'd saved for months to buy. Nothing flashy, but the nicest thing I owned. Mom had even helped me style my hair, pulling half of it back while letting the rest fall in soft waves down my back. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," she said, her eyes glistening with unexpected tears. She pressed the small package into my hands. "Open it now before everyone comes." Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a small heart charm. "It was my mother's," Mom explained. "I've been saving it for this day." I hugged her fiercely, feeling her fragile bones beneath my arms. When had she become so thin, so diminished? "Thank you," I whispered. "It's perfect." The doorbell rang at exactly 6:30. Emily, punctual as always, with a gift bag dangling from her fingers. "Happy birthday, adult person," she sang, throwing her arms around me. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and for a moment I let myself believe this night could be normal, could be special. The others arrived shortly after, each bearing small gifts and wide smiles. We gathered in the living room, their voices filling the space with a warmth it had never known. I kept glancing at the clock, aware that Conrad would be home by 7:15, as he always was. At 7:10, the front door opened. My heart jumped into my throat as Conrad's measured footsteps sounded in the hallway. The conversation dimmed as he appeared in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Good evening," he said, his gaze sweeping over my friends with cool assessment. "Jessica's birthday gathering, I presume." I stepped forward. "Yes, thank you again for allowing it. We were just about to have dinner." To my surprise, Conrad nodded, and even attempted what might have been a smile. "Carry on then, I'll join you shortly." Relief flooded through me. Maybe this would work after all. Maybe tonight was the beginning of a new chapter. Dinner went smoothly, surprisingly so. Conrad was quiet but not openly hostile, even complimenting the food once. My friends, initially tense in his presence, gradually relaxed as the meal progressed. By the time Mom brought out the cake, store-bought after all, a concession to Conrad's unexpected attendance, the atmosphere had transformed into something almost normal. As the candles glowed in the dimmed light, my friends sang happy birthday, their voices a chorus of genuine affection. Even Mom joined in, her voice tremulous but present. Only Conrad remained silent, watching from his place at the head of the table. "Make a wish," Emily urged as the song ended. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and silently wished for the one thing I'd always wanted: to belong, to be wanted, to be enough. Then I blew out all 18 candles in one breath to a round of applause. That's when it happened. Conrad stood abruptly, his chair scraping harshly against the floor. The sudden movement silenced the room instantly. Something in his posture, in the cold gleam of his eyes, made my skin prickle with warning. "Now that the festivities are concluding," he said, his voice eerily calm, "and now that Jessica has officially reached adulthood, I believe it's time for my gift." My friends exchanged uncertain glances. Mum's face had gone pale, her fingers clutching the edge of the table. Conrad reached beneath his chair and withdrew a plastic grocery bag, the kind you get for free at supermarkets. He held it up, dangling it in front of me like some bizarre trophy. "You see, Jessica," he continued, each word precise and measured, "I've been waiting for this day for 8 years, the day when my legal obligation to you finally ends." The room had gone completely still. I could hear the ticking of the clock on the wall, the shallow breathing of everyone around the table. "You don't belong here," Conrad said, his voice hardening. "You never did, and as of tonight you're out." He tossed the bag, and it landed with a soft thud at my feet. I stared at it, uncomprehending, until the reality of what was happening crashed over me like a wave. "Conrad," my mother whispered, but he silenced her with a look. "I've put some of your clothes in there," he informed me, as if discussing a business transaction. "The essentials. The rest will be donated." "You can't do this," I managed, my voice barely audible. "I can and I am," Conrad replied. "You're 18 now, an adult, and adults don't live off the charity of people they're not related to." "She's my daughter." My mother's voice cracked as she finally found the courage to speak. "You can't throw her out." Conrad turned to her, his expression coldly triumphant. "Actually, Martha, according to our prenuptial agreement, I can do exactly that, unless you'd prefer to join her." The threat hung in the air between them. My mother's face crumpled as she realized she was trapped, choosing between me and the security Conrad provided, the home she had nowhere else to go from. My friends sat frozen, witnesses to a cruelty they'd never imagined. Zach half rose from his chair, as if to protest, but Conrad's glacial stare pushed him back down. "This is sick," Emily breathed, her face flushed with anger. "Jessica, you're coming to my house." But before I could respond, Conrad cut in. "That won't be necessary. Jessica knows she isn't welcome at your home either. Your parents called me yesterday, concerned about the influence she might be having on you." The lie was so smooth, so confident, that for a moment, doubt flickered across Emily's face. It was enough, just enough, to shatter what remained of my composure. I stood, my legs trembling beneath me. The plastic bag felt impossibly heavy as I picked it up. Rain had begun to fall outside, pattering against the windows like a soundtrack to my humiliation. "Jessica, don't," my mother pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "We'll figure something out." But I knew there was nothing to figure out. Conrad had won, as he always did. He had waited for this moment, planned for it, savored it. Without another word, I walked out of the dining room, through the front door, and into the gathering storm. Behind me, I heard the chaotic sounds of chairs scraping, voices raised in argument, my mother's sobs, but I didn't look back. Couldn't look back. The rain soaked through my blue dress, plastering it to my skin. The plastic bag, Conrad's final message, clutched in my shaking hands, and that's when the headlights appeared in the darkness, slicing through the rain. That's when the black car stopped. That's when the window slid down. That's when everything changed. "Jessica Monroe." The man's voice was deep, confident, cutting through the storms. Chaos with startling clarity. "Your true father ordered me to find you." I stood paralyzed, rain streaming down my face, mixing with tears I no longer tried to hide. The black Lincoln town car idled quietly, its expensive paint gleaming under the streetlights despite the downpour. "Who are you?" I managed, my voice barely audible over the storm. The man stepped out, unfurling an umbrella in one smooth motion before approaching me. Up close, he was older than I'd first thought, maybe 50, with salt and pepper hair cut military short and eyes that missed nothing. "My name is Callan Ward," he said, holding the umbrella over both of us. "I work for Kieran Hale." The name hit me like a physical force, Kieran Hale. I'd heard it exactly once in my life, whispered from my mother's lips during a late-night phone call she never knew I overheard. I was 12 then, and had tucked the name away like a forbidden treasure, never daring to speak it aloud. "That's impossible," I whispered. "My father is not dead, as you were told," Callan finished. "Very much alive, and he's been looking for you for a very long time." Thunder cracked overhead, emphasizing his words with cosmic punctuation. The grocery bag in my hand suddenly felt insignificant, absurd. "This isn't happening," I said, more to myself than to him. "This is some sick joke Conrad's playing." Callan's expression hardened at Conrad's name. "I assure you, Miss Monroe, this is no joke. Mr. Hale has been searching for you for 8 years. The restraining order expired today, on your 18th birthday." "Restraining order? Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere dry." He gestured to the car. "No obligation. You're free to walk away. But there are answers inside that car you've been denied your entire life." I hesitated, years of ingrained caution warring with desperate curiosity. What did I have to lose now? Conrad had made sure of that. The back door opened, revealing a warm, leather-scented interior. No one else was inside. "Where is he?" I asked. "This... Kieran?" "Waiting," Callan replied simply. "It's about an hour's drive." An hour to what? To whom? To the father I'd been told abandoned us? To some elaborate trap? My mind spun with possibilities, each more unlikely than the last. But then I thought of Conrad's face as he tossed that plastic bag at my feet, the cold satisfaction in his eyes. The years of subtle cruelty designed to make me feel unwanted, unwelcome, unworthy. I stepped toward the car. "One moment," Callan said, reaching into his jacket. He withdrew a thick, cream-colored envelope, offering it to me with formal precision. "Mr. Hale asked me to give you this, regardless of your decision." The paper was expensive, heavy in my hands. My name was written across the front in a bold, slanting hand I'd never seen before. With trembling fingers, I tore it open, stepping closer to the car's interior light to read, "Jessica, if you're reading this, you've met Callan, which means you're finally 18, and I can legally contact you without risking your mother's situation. There's so much to explain, so many years to account for. I've written this letter 100 times in my head, but now that the moment has come, words seem inadequate. You were never unwanted. You were stolen from me, and I have waited every day for the chance to bring you home. I won't make excuses for my absence in your life. I won't vilify your mother, who I believe made choices under duress I can only imagine. What I will say is this. I have fought for you through every legal channel available to me. I have written letters that were returned unopened. I have called numbers that were disconnected. I have hired investigators who were blocked by restraining orders and legal maneuvering by a man who had no right to erase me from your life. You owe me nothing. Not your time, not your forgiveness, certainly not your love. But I owe you everything I've been prevented from, giving you for 8 years. If nothing else, I owe you the truth. The car will take you anywhere you want to go. If that's to me, I'll be waiting. If it's somewhere else, I understand. Either way, you'll find a credit card in this envelope with your name on it. It has no limit. Use it for whatever you need, college, an apartment, travel. It's not a bribe. It's the support I was never allowed to provide. Whatever you decide, know this. You have always been loved. You have always been wanted. You have always been mine. Kieran." The card fell into my palm as I finished reading. Platinum, heavy, with my name embossed on its face. Jessica Kieran Monroe. My middle name. The name I'd always been told was for my grandmother. Another lie. "He named me," I whispered, the revelation shaking me to my core. Callan nodded, his professional demeanor softening slightly. "He did more than that, but the rest is his story to tell if you'll hear it." I looked back toward Conrad's house, where lights still blazed, silhouettes moving urgently behind curtains. A life I was now exiled from, a home that had never truly been mine. Then I looked at the car, doorway to an unknown future, to answers I'd never dared to seek. "Take me to him," I said, and stepped inside. The car's interior was understated luxury, soft leather seats, subtle lighting, the quiet hum of climate control erasing the chill of the rain. As we pulled away from the curb, I caught a glimpse of the front door opening, of my mother's desperate figure illuminated in the doorway. Too late. Always too late. It's about an hour to Beacon. Hill, Callan said, eyes meeting mine briefly in the rearview mirror. You should try to dry off. There's a blanket and some towels in the compartment beside you. Beacon Hill, one of Boston's most exclusive neighborhoods. The information settled uneasily beside the platinum card in my pocket, raising new questions. Who is he? I asked, wrapping the cashmere throw around my shoulders. What does Hay do? Callan seemed to weigh his response carefully. Mr. Hale is a private person. He made his fortune in technology, security systems specifically. He's comfortable. The understatement was clear enough. And he's been looking for me all this time? Since the day the restraining order was served. I've worked for Mr. Hale for 15 years, Miss Monroe. I've never seen him as determined about anything as he's been about finding you. What restraining order? Why would my mother— That's not my story to tell, Callan interrupted gently but firmly. Mr. Hale will explain everything. I fell silent, watching the familiar streets of my neighborhood recede, replaced by highways and then the glittering skyline of downtown Boston. The rain had eased to a gentle patter, city lights, reflecting in puddles like scattered stars. My thoughts tumbled over each other, memories recontextualized, questions multiplying. Had my mother really been complicit in keeping me from my father? What role had Conrad played? Why had no one ever told me the truth? The grocery bag sat on the seat beside me, Conrad's final insult. I pushed it away, unable to look at it. We're getting close, Callan said as we turned onto narrower streets, lined with historic brownstones and gas lamps that gave the neighborhood its 19th century charm. Are you ready for this? No, I answered honestly, but I don't think I ever could be. We pulled up before a 4-story townhouse, its brick facade meticulously maintained, windows glowing with warm light. Nothing ostentatious, just quiet, assured. Wealth, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. We're here, Callan said, stopping the car. He turned to face me fully. One more thing, Miss Monroe. Mr. Hale. He's been waiting for this moment for a very long time. He may be emotional. I nodded, suddenly unable to speak. My heart hammered in my chest as Callan opened my door, sheltering me once again with his umbrella as we walked. To the front entrance. He didn't need a key. The door opened as we approached, and there in the doorway stood a man I'd never seen, but somehow instinctively recognized. Tall, with the same wavy dark hair as mine, though his was streaked with silver at the temples. The same deep-set eyes, the same slight cleft in the chin. He wore simple clothes, dark jeans, a grey sweater, but carried himself with the confidence of someone who has nothing to prove. Jessica, he said, and his voice broke on my name. I stood frozen, the weight of the moment too immense to process. In his face, I saw my own. In his eyes, I saw a lifetime of waiting. Kieran? I managed, the name unfamiliar on my lips. He nodded, and then, with a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob, he opened his arms. I don't remember moving. I don't remember dropping the plastic bag or Callan stepping discreetly away. I only remember the feeling of being enveloped in an embrace I didn't know I'd been missing my entire life, and knowing with absolute certainty that I was finally where I belonged. Dawn found us still talking in Kieran's study, a comfortable room lined with bookshelves and dominated by a fireplace where flames had burned down to glowing embers. Mugs of tea, long since gone cold, sat forgotten on the coffee table between us. Outside, Boston was awakening, soft morning light giving the brick buildings a golden glow. You look so much like her, Kieran said, shaking his head in wonder. Your mother at 20, it's uncanny. It was the 100th such observation since I'd arrived, both of us hungrily. Cataloguing similarities, differences, filling in 8 years of absence with fragmented details. Everyone always said I looked like her, I replied. Conrad hated it. Kieran's expression darkened at the name. Conrad Caldwell has much to answer for. You still haven't told me everything, I said, leaning forward. All night Kieran had shared stories, how he met my mother in college, their whirlwind romance, the joy when I was born. But he'd skirted the central question. What happened? Why did you leave us? I never left you, Jessica. His voice was low, intense. I would never have left you. Then what? A knock at the study door interrupted us. Callan entered, impeccable despite the early hour. Sir, there's a situation developing. Mrs. Caldwell is outside. My stomach dropped. Mom's here. Kieran's face registered surprise, then resignation. Let her in, Callan, it's time. Moments later, my mother stood in the doorway, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her clothes hastily thrown on. When she saw me, relief washed over her face, quickly followed by apprehension as she registered whose home I was in. Jessica, she breathed. Thank God. Hello, Martha, Kieran said quietly. It's been a long time. My mother flinched as if struck. Kieran. Her eyes darted between us, taking in our proximity, the obvious rapport. Jessica, we need to go. Now. I didn't move. Go where, Mom? Back to Conrad's house, where he just threw me out like garbage? It's not like that. He was angry. He didn't mean... Stop. My voice was stronger than I'd expected. Stop defending him. Stop lying. Her face crumpled. I never wanted this. What did you want? I demanded. Did you want to keep me from knowing my own father for 8 years? Did you want me to believe he'd abandoned us? Did you want me to live with a man who made me feel like an unwanted intruder in my own home? You don't understand, she whispered. You can't possibly understand what I was facing. Then help me understand, I pleaded, because right now all I know is that everything I thought was true about my life has been a lie. My mother sank into a chair, her body seeming to fold in on itself. For a long moment she was silent, gathering herself. When she finally spoke, her voice was hollow. After your father and I divorced, I was lost. You were only 10. I had no job, no savings. Kieran paid child support, but it wasn't enough for the lifestyle I thought you deserved. The lifestyle you thought I deserved, I corrected, anger flaring. I never cared about that. I know that now. She twisted her wedding ring, Conrad's ring, nervously. Conrad seemed like salvation. Successful, stable. He promised to take care of us both. For a price, Kieran interjected, his voice tight with controlled fury. Tell her the price, Martha. My mother closed her eyes briefly. Conrad, he didn't want to raise another man's child. Not really. But he agreed, on one condition, that Kieran would have no contact with you. No visits, no calls, no letters. The cruelty of it stole my breath. And you agreed to this. You let him cut Dad out of my life completely. I thought I was doing what was best for you. Her voice rose in desperate defense. Conrad could give you everything Kieran couldn't. Stability, a good neighborhood, the best schools. What Conrad gave me was 8 years of emotional abuse, I said, each word precise and painful. 8 years of being told I didn't belong, that I wasn't wanted, that I was tolerated out of charity. I didn't know. My mother's face was ashen. I swear, Jessica, I never knew how bad it was. You never told me. Would you have listened if I had? I asked, the question hanging heavy between us. She had no answer for that. Kieran, who had been watching our exchange with growing tension, finally spoke. The restraining order, Martha. Tell her about that. My mother's shoulders slumped. Further, it was Conrad's idea. He said it was the only way to make sure there would be no complications. He had a lawyer friend draw it up. Based on false accusations, Kieran added, his voice tight. Claims that I was unstable, potentially violent. Lies, all of it, but effective ones. I signed it, my mother admitted, unable to meet my eyes. I let them serve it to Kieran at his office. It was the lowest point of my life. Do you know what that did to me? Kieran asked, rising to his feet. Do you have any idea what it's like to be legally barred from seeing your own child? To know she's being told you abandoned her? I had no choice. My mother's composure finally broke, tears streaming down her face. Conrad controlled everything, the money, the house, my life. What was I supposed to do? Tell me the truth, I whispered. That's what you were supposed to do. Tell me my father wanted me, even if he couldn't see me. Silence fell between us, heavy with years of deception and loss. Outside, the sun had fully risen, bathing the room in light that felt too bright for the darkness of our conversation. Conrad threw her out last night, Kieran finally said to my mother, on her 18th birthday. Put her clothes in a grocery bag and told her she wasn't welcome anymore. Is that the stability you sacrificed everything for? My mother's face registered shock, then shame. I didn't know he was planning that. I swear. When you ran out, Jessica, I tried to stop you, but Conrad... She touched her wrist absently, and I noticed for the first time the shadow of a bruise forming there. Understanding dawned, horrible and clarifying. He hurt you. She looked away. It's not the first time. The admission hung in the air between us, reshaping my understanding yet again. All these years I'd seen my mother as complicit, weak, choosing Conrad over me. I hadn't realized she might be trapped too. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, gentler now. Why didn't you leave him? And go where? She asked simply. With what money? What job? Conrad made sure I had nothing of my own, nothing in my name. Kieran's expression shifted, anger giving way to something more complex. You could have come to me, Martha. Whatever happened between us, I would have helped you both. Conrad said you'd take Jessica from me if I ever tried, she confessed. That you'd use your money, your connections to get full custody. I believed him. I was afraid. The three of us sat in silence, the weight of 8 years of manipulation and fear settling around us like dust. What happens now? I finally asked, looking between them. Conrad thinks I'm gone for good, and I don't want to go back there, not ever. You don't have to, Kieran assured me. You're 18, legally. An adult. You can stay here as long as you want. My mother flinched at that, but didn't argue. And what about you, Mom? I turned to her, suddenly seeing her, not as the mother who had failed to protect me, but as another of Conrad's victims. Are you going back to him? She looked down at her hands, at the wedding ring that had become a shackle. I don't know how not to, she whispered. Before I could respond, Callan appeared at the door again. Sir, there's a disturbance outside. Mr. Caldwell has arrived, and he's demanding to speak with Mrs. Caldwell and Jessica. My blood ran cold. He followed you here? My mother nodded miserably. He must have. I told him I was going to look for you, but I didn't say where. Kieran's expression hardened. Callan, call security. Have them escort Mr. Caldwell off the property. No, wait, I said, surprising myself. Let him in. All three adults stared at me in shock. Jessica, my mother began, panic edging her voice. You don't understand what he's like when he's angry. I understand exactly what he's like, I countered. I've lived with it for 8 years, but I'm done hiding, done being afraid. I turned to Kieran. Let him in. Let him see what he's lost. Let him see the truth. Kieran studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Brave girl, he murmured, and there was pride in his voice that made my chest ache with newness. He turned to Callan. Show Mr. Caldwell in, but have security standing by. The pieces were all on the table now, the hidden truths exposed to light. It was time to face the man who had orchestrated it all. It was time for Conrad to see what happened to the castle of lies he'd built, now that its foundation had crumbled. Conrad Caldwell entered Kieran's study like a thundercloud, his normally immaculate appearance disheveled from a sleepless night. His eyes, cold and calculating, swept the room, taking in every detail, the obvious wealth, my comfortable position on the couch beside Kieran, my mother's hunched form in the armchair. So this is where you ran to, he said, his voice deceptively calm. Making a scene as usual, Jessica. I felt Kieran tense beside me, but kept my focus on Conrad. For the first time, I saw him clearly, not as the towering authority figure who had dominated my adolescence, but as a deeply insecure man whose power came from controlling others. You threw me out, I replied evenly. Where did you expect me to go? Conrad's gaze shifted to Kieran, recognition and hatred flashing across his features. I see Martha wasted no time running to her ex-husband. How convenient. She didn't bring me here, I said, before my mother could respond. She didn't tell me anything about my father for 8 years. That was your doing, wasn't it? Your mother and I made decisions for your welfare, Conrad replied, his voice taking on the patronizing tone I knew so well. Decisions a child couldn't be expected to understand. I'm not a child anymore, I said, and these weren't decisions. They were manipulations, lies. Conrad's jaw tightened. Martha, he said, not looking at me anymore, get your things. We're leaving, both of you. My mother didn't move. No, Conrad. The single word seemed to hang in the air between them. Conrad's eyes narrowed dangerously. Excuse me. I said no. My mother's voice was barely above a whisper, but steady. Jessica isn't coming home with us, and neither am I. For an instant, Conrad's mask slipped, revealing raw fury beneath the controlled exterior. Then, with visible effort, he composed himself, straightening his already straight tie. Is that so? He said. his voice dropping to that quiet register that had always preceded his worst moments. "And where exactly will you go, Martha? Our house is in my name. Our bank accounts are in my name. Your car is in my name. You have nothing." My mother flinched but held her ground. "I'll figure it out." Conrad laughed, a sharp, unpleasant sound. "After 8 years? As a housewife? With no recent work experience, no references? Don't be naive. She won't be alone." Kieran spoke for the first time, his voice level, but with steel beneath it. He rose to his feet, and I noticed with a flicker of satisfaction that he was several inches taller than Conrad. "Whatever support Martha and Jessica need, I'm more than capable of providing." Conrad's face flushed with anger. "Of course, the gallant ex-husband rides to the rescue. How touching." He turned back to my mother. "Have you forgotten why you left him in the first place, Martha? His long hours? His obsession with work? The affairs?" I looked sharply at Kieran, who shook his head minutely. "There were no affairs, Jessica. That was Conrad's invention, part of his manipulation." "Lies," Conrad spat. "All of it. Martha came to me because you were never there for her or your daughter." "That's not true." My mother's voice was stronger now. "I came to you because I was desperate and afraid. You offered security, but it came with conditions I was too weak to refuse." Conrad's facade cracked further. "I gave you everything, a beautiful home, financial stability, status, and in return, you isolated me. From everyone I loved," my mother countered. "You monitored my calls, my emails, my friendships. You made me dependent on you for everything, then used that dependency to control me." "Control you?" Conrad's voice rose. "I protected you, both of you. From what? Your own bad decisions?" "From him." Conrad jabbed a finger toward Kieran. "From the man who would have taken your daughter and left you with nothing." The accusation hung in the air, vibrating with the force of Conrad's conviction. I looked at my father, searching his face for truth. "Is that what you told her?" Kieran asked Conrad, his voice deadly quiet. "That I would take Jessica away?" He turned to my mother. "Martha, I never would have done that to you, never. You would have had every right to," my mother replied, tears welling in her eyes. "After what I did, keeping her from you for all these years." "What you did under duress," Kieran corrected gently. "Under his manipulation." Conrad made a sound of disgust. "This is absurd. I'm not standing here listening to this character assassination." "Then leave," I said simply. Conrad's attention snapped back to me, his expression hardening. "You ungrateful little—" He cut himself off, visibly struggling for control. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? Running to the father who abandoned you at the first opportunity?" "He never abandoned me," I replied, the truth of it settling into my bones with quiet certainty. "You took me from him, you and the restraining order based on lies." Something shifted in Conrad's expression, a flicker of uncertainty, quickly masked. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about." I reached for Kieran's hand, drawing strength from his solid presence. "I've seen the court documents, the restraining order. I know about the false allegations you helped create to keep my father away from me." Conrad's eyes darted to my mother. "You've been talking, I see." "She didn't have to," Kieran interjected. "I kept copies of everything. Every legal filing, every rejected appeal, every letter returned unopened." He gestured toward a file on his desk. 8 years of documentation. 8 years of fighting to reach my daughter while you systematically poisoned her against me. "I never said a word against you," Conrad protested, but the defense sounded hollow, even to my ears. "You didn't have to," I said quietly. "Every time you reminded me I wasn't your blood, every time you made it clear I was unwanted, you were telling me my real father hadn't wanted me either. Why else would I be stuck with you?" The brutal honesty of my words seemed to hit Conrad like a physical blow. For a moment, something like shame crossed his face. "Last night wasn't an impulsive decision, was it?" I pressed, seeing his momentary weakness. "You've been planning to throw me out on my 18th birthday all along. That's why you agreed to the party, so you could humiliate me in front of my friends." Conrad's silence was confirmation enough. "Why?" I asked, genuinely wanting to understand. "What did I ever do to make you hate me so much?" "I don't hate you," Conrad said, and for the first time I heard something besides coldness in his voice. "I resent what you represent, Martha's past, her connection to him." He gestured dismissively toward Kieran. "So, you punished a child for existing," Kieran said, his disgust evident. For being a reminder of something that threatened your ego. You have no right to judge me, Conrad snapped. You weren't there. You didn't see how she pined for you, how she compared me to you in 1,000 small ways. Even the child, always with her nose in a book, just like her father. A constant reminder that I was second choice. The pathetic truth of his insecurity hung in the air, stripping away the last of my fear. Conrad wasn't powerful, he was petty, small, threatened by the shadow of a man he'd worked so hard to erase. Martha, he said, his voice suddenly softer, cajoling. This is ridiculous. Come home, we can work this out. My mother stood slowly, her eyes clear and resolved. There's nothing to work out, Conrad. I'm filing for divorce. Conrad's face flushed dark with anger. On what grounds? Emotional abuse, for starters, she replied. Physical abuse, if necessary. You'll never prove it, Conrad said, his voice dangerously low. And no judge will award you a penny without evidence. I have evidence, I said, pulling out my phone. Every cruel comment, every manipulation, every time you made Mom and me feel worthless, I've been documenting it for years. Text messages, emails, videos taken when you didn't know I was recording. Conrad's face went slack with shock. You wouldn't. I would, I confirmed. I kept them as reminders to myself that I wasn't crazy, that the things you said and did were real. I never thought I'd use them. But now, this is blackmail, Conrad hissed. No, Kieran interjected. This is consequence. Conrad looked from face to face, searching for an ally and finding none. Even my mother, who had bent to his will for 8 years, stood firm, her newfound strength a wall he couldn't breach. You'll regret this, he said finally, his voice tight with suppressed rage. All of you. He turned to leave, his shoulders rigid with wounded pride and thwarted control. At the doorway, he paused, looking back at me one final time. I did what I thought was necessary, he said, as if this explained everything, justified everything. So did I replied. Goodbye, Conrad. We listened to his footsteps recede down the hallway, heard the front door open and close. Only when the sound of his car engine faded into the distance did the tension in the room finally break. My mother covered her face with her hands and began to sob. Not the quiet, controlled tears I'd grown accustomed to seeing, but deep, wrenching cries that shook her entire body. Years of fear and suppression, pouring out at once. Kieran moved to her side, hesitating before placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. It's over, Martha, he said softly. He can't hurt either of you anymore. I watched them, these two people who had once loved each other, now connected only through me and the shared experience of Conrad's manipulation. The past couldn't be undone, the 8 lost years couldn't be recovered. But maybe, just maybe, we could build something new from the ruins. What happens now? I asked, my voice small in the sudden quiet. Kieran looked up at me, his eyes, my eyes, full of cautious hope. Now, he said, we start again. The next few weeks passed in a blur of adjustments and revelations. Kieran insisted we both stay at his home while we figured out next steps. My mother took the guest. Suite on the 3rd floor, I settled into a room overlooking the garden, and we began the delicate work of becoming a family again, or perhaps becoming one for the first time. Conrad, true to form, didn't go quietly. There were threatening phone calls, legal maneuvers, attempts to freeze accounts and claim possessions. But Kieran had resources Conrad couldn't match, including high-powered attorneys, who efficiently neutralized each attack. When Conrad finally realized he was outmatched, he retreated to lick his wounds, agreeing to a settlement that gave my mother what she needed to start fresh. I still can't believe you kept all this, I said to Kieran one evening, leafing through a box of mementos he'd preserved from my childhood, report cards my mother had sent before the restraining order, school photos obtained through private investigators, newspaper clippings mentioning my academic achievements. Kieran looked up from his laptop, where he'd been reviewing contracts for his company. I needed them, he said simply, to remind myself you were real, that you were out there growing up without me. We sat in his study, the room that had become our regular gathering place. My mother was upstairs on a call with her new therapist, another of Kieran's arrangements, helping her process the trauma of her years with Conrad. There's something I've been meaning to ask, I said, setting aside a folder containing every letter he'd written me, all returned unopened. The credit card, the one you sent with Callan, it has my full name on it, Jessica Kieran Munro. Kieran nodded, waiting for my question. Mum told me my middle name was for my grandmother, Catherine. A smile touched Kieran's lips. That was your mother's invention. When you were born, we named you after both of us, Jessica for Martha's grandmother, Kieran for me, a tradition in my family giving the father's name as a middle name regardless of gender. I traced the embossed letters on the card. Another lie. A protective one, perhaps, Kieran suggested. After she married Conrad, using my name would have been difficult for her. This was Kieran's way. Gentle explanations, never vilifying my mother despite the pain her choices had caused him. His capacity for forgiveness humbled me, especially since my own feelings toward her remained complicated, tangled with hurt and betrayal. You don't have to. Defend her to me, I said more sharply than I'd intended. Kieran set his work aside, giving me his full attention. I'm not defending her actions, Jessica. I'm trying to understand them. There's a difference. Understanding feels a lot like excusing sometimes. It can, he acknowledged. But without understanding, there's no path forward. Only bitterness. I thought about that, about the bitterness Conrad had nursed for years, how it had poisoned everything it touched. I don't want to be bitter, I admitted, but I don't know how to just move past it either. You don't have to move past anything until you're ready, Kieran said. Healing isn't linear, it's messy and complicated, and sometimes it hurts like hell before it gets better. His candor startled a laugh from me. Is that your professional opinion, Mr. Successful CEO? That's my personal experience, as someone who spent 8 years learning how to live with an open wound. His smile was sad but genuine. Some days were better than others. A comfortable silence fell between us. This was the rhythm we'd established, moments of connection punctuated by quiet, neither of us pushing too hard or expecting too much, too soon. I got an email from Emily today, I said eventually. She wants to know if I'm coming back to school to finish senior year. Kieran raised an eyebrow. Are you? I shrugged. I don't know. Going back feels like stepping backwards somehow. You could finish at a different school, he suggested. Or get your GED and start college early. You have options, Jessica. You don't have to decide everything right away. Options. The word still felt foreign, luxurious. Under Conrad's roof, there had only ever been his way, or the highway. Now suddenly doors were opening in every direction. What about college? I ventured. I applied to state schools because they were all we could afford, but now you can go wherever you want, Kieran finished for me. Harvard, Yale, Stanford, anywhere that interests you. That's a lot of pressure. It's not meant to be, it's meant to be freedom. Kieran leaned forward, his expression earnest. Jessica, I have resources, yes, and they're yours to use as you see fit, but I don't want you to feel obligated to meet some arbitrary standard of achievement. I want you to find what makes you come alive, whatever that is. And what makes me come alive is, I don't know, becoming a dolphin trainer in Florida. Kieran laughed. Then I'll buy you a wetsuit and be at your first show, embarrassingly proud and taking too many pictures. The easy acceptance in his voice loosened something tight inside me. Conrad had always made it clear that my worth was tied to achievement, to reflecting well on him. The idea that I could be valued simply for being me was still new, tender as a fresh sprout. I think I want to study literature, I said, the admission feeling like a secret finally told. I've always loved books, writing. Conrad thought it was impractical. Conrad was an idiot, Kieran said matter-of-factly. Literature is the heart of civilization, and if it's what you love, then it's exactly what you should pursue. From the doorway came a soft sound. My mother stood there watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read. Sorry, she said. I didn't mean to interrupt. You're not interrupting, Kieran assured her. Come join us. Jessica was just telling me about her interest in literature. My mother entered hesitantly, taking a seat on the edge of the sofa. You always did have your nose in a book, she said, a hint of pride in her voice. Even as a tiny thing, you'd make me read the same story over and over, until you had it memorized. I remember that, Kieran said, smiling at the memory. The Velveteen Rabbit. You knew every word by the time you were 4. The shared recollection hung between them, a moment from when we were a family, before everything fractured. I've been thinking, my mother said, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap, about what comes next, for me. Kieran and I both looked at her expectantly. I can't stay here forever, she continued. It's too complicated, too much history. Mum, you don't have to leave, I began, surprised by my own protectiveness. I'm not leaving you, sweetheart, not again, never again. She reached for my hand. But I need to stand on my own. Find out who Martha Monroe is when she's not defined by a man, any man. I glanced at Kieran, expecting to see hurt at her implied rejection. Instead, I found understanding, even approval. Have you thought about what you might do? He asked. My mother nodded. I was an art teacher before everything. I'd like to go back to that, maybe. Start small, work with children. Again, I think that's a wonderful idea, Kieran said warmly, and I'm happy to help however I can. Contacts in education, references, whatever you need. My mother's eyes welled with tears. Why are you being so kind to me? After what I did? Kieran considered this, his expression thoughtful. Because holding on to anger serves no one, least of all me. Because you're Jessica's mother, and she needs you. And because I believe you were as much Conrad's victim as we were in your own way. My mother wiped at her eyes. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't about deserving, Kieran replied gently. It's about choosing to move forward, unburdened by the past. The wisdom in his words resonated in the quiet room. My mother nodded, accepting both the grace offered and the truth beneath it. There's an apartment building I own in Cambridge, Kieran said, near Harvard Square. Small units, but nice. There's a vacancy coming up next month. It would be a good place to start fresh, close enough for Jessica to visit easily. My mother looked stunned. I couldn't possibly— You can, Kieran interrupted firmly. Consider it part of the settlement from Conrad. You're entitled to housing after what you've been through. I watched this exchange with growing wonder. The generosity between them, the careful rebuilding of trust where there had been so much pain. It was a kind of alchemy, transforming the base metals of our past into something precious. Later that night, unable to sleep, I wandered down to the kitchen for a glass of water. To my surprise, I found my mother, there staring out the window at the garden illuminated by moonlight. Can't sleep? I asked, joining her. She shook her head. Too many thoughts. We stood side by side, watching the silver light play across the carefully tended plants. He's a good man, she said finally. He always was. I was a fool to let him go. Then why did you? I asked, the question that had been burning in me for weeks. My mother sighed. Fear, insecurity. Your father was rising so fast in his career, meeting important people, traveling. I was just a small-town girl with an art degree. I convinced myself he would outgrow me, leave me behind. So when Conrad came along, solid and steady and so certain about everything, it seemed safer. But it wasn't. No, she agreed softly. It wasn't. Safety built on control is just another kind of prison. She turned to me, her eyes bright with tears. I'm so sorry, Jessica, for all of it. For not being strong enough to protect you, for letting Conrad come between you and your father, for every moment you felt unwanted or unloved. I wanted to tell her it was okay, that I forgave her, but the words stuck in my throat, not quite ready to be spoken. Instead, I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. We're here now, I said. That's what matters. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning, a foundation on which something new could be built. Fall arrived in Boston with a painter's palette of colors, transforming the public garden across from Kieran's home into a canvas of crimson and gold. I watched the changes from my bedroom window each morning, the shifting seasons mirroring my own internal transformations. 3 months had passed since that stormy night when Conrad had thrust my belongings into a grocery bag and changed the trajectory of my life forever. 3 months of building new connections, mending broken ones, and discovering who I could be outside the shadow of his cruelty. My mother had moved into the Cambridge apartment a month ago, settling into a cozy one-bedroom that overlooked a courtyard filled with oak trees. She'd begun volunteering at a community arts center, teaching watercolor classes to children, her voice growing stronger, her posture more confident with each passing week. We met for coffee every Sunday morning, slowly relearning each other without Conrad's oppressive presence between us. As for me, I'd decided not to return to my old high school. Instead, Kieran had connected me with a private tutor who was helping me prepare for my GED, with plans to apply for college admission the following fall. In the meantime, I'd begun interning at a small literary magazine headquartered in Back Bay, work that filled me with purpose and joy I hadn't known was possible. Dad wants to know if you're coming to dinner tonight, Emily said. her voice crackling through my phone as I walked home from the magazine's offices. Mom's making her famous lasagna. Emily, true to her loyal nature, had stood by me through everything. When Conrad had spread rumors about my dramatic exit and ungrateful behavior, she'd shut them down with fierce protectiveness. Now, she was my bridge to the parts of my old life, worth preserving. "I can't tonight," I replied, sidestepping tourists snapping photos of the autumn foliage. "Kieran's taking me to meet his sister, my aunt, I guess. She's flying in from Seattle." "Look at you, with your fancy extended family," Emily teased. "Next thing I know, you'll be jetting off to family reunions in the Hamptons." I laughed, no longer bothered by references to Kieran's wealth. In the beginning, I'd been overwhelmed by it, uncomfortable with the privileges it afforded. But Kieran wore his success lightly, and I was learning to accept it as simply one aspect of our shared life, neither defining nor limiting. Hardly. Kieran says his sister Claire is allergic to pretension. She's a wildlife veterinarian who spends most of her time in hiking boots. Sounds like someone I'd like, Emily said. "Bring her to coffee sometime before she leaves." "I will," I promised, "and tell your parents I'll take a rain check on lasagna." We said our goodbyes as I approached Kieran's brownstone, my home now, though I still sometimes had to remind myself I belonged there. Inside, I found Kieran in the kitchen, attempting to cook something that filled the house with fragrant spice. His laptop was open on the counter, a video call showing a woman with his same dark hair and easy smile. "Jessica's here," he announced, gesturing me closer to the screen. "Claire, meet your niece." "There she is." Claire's face lit up with genuine warmth. "The famous Jessica. I've been hearing about you non-stop for the last 3 months." "All good things, I hope," I replied, suddenly shy. "Are you kidding? This guy won't shut up about how brilliant and talented and amazing you are." Claire rolled her eyes good-naturedly. "It's insufferable, really. I can't wait to meet you in person and find out if you're actually human or some kind of superior alien species." Kieran laughed, stirring whatever was bubbling on the stove. "Ignore my sister. She expresses affection through mockery." "It's a family trait," Claire confided. "You'll develop it too, I'm sure, genetic predisposition." The easy banter between them, the casual inclusion of me in their family dynamic, warmed me more than I could express. For so long under Conrad's roof, I had been the outsider, the interloper. Here I was woven seamlessly into the fabric of belonging. "My flight gets in at 7, Claire continued. "I'm going straight to the hotel to freshen up, but I'll be there for dinner by 8:30. "I told you you don't need a hotel," Kieran protested. "We have plenty of room. And I told you I snore like a chainsaw and have no intention of keeping everyone awake. Besides, I need somewhere to escape to when you start showing Jessica my embarrassing childhood photos." "There are embarrassing childhood photos." I perked up, delighted by this prospect. "Oh, honey, you have no idea," Claire grinned. "Wait until you see Kieran's goth phase. Black eyeliner, spiky hair, the works." "That's enough from you," Kieran said, pointing a wooden spoon at the screen. "Go finish packing before I change my mind about picking you up." After Claire disconnected, promising dire revelations, later Kieran turned to me with an apologetic smile. "Sorry about that. Claire has no filter whatsoever." "I like her," I said honestly. "She reminds me of you." Kieran looked pleased. "We've always been close. She was devastated when I lost contact with you, appointed herself your official aunt from afar, sending birthday and Christmas gifts I had to store away. Another piece of my hidden history, slotted into place. Is that where all those gifts in the storage room came from? I wondered about those. Shortly after moving in, I'd discovered Kieran's careful archive of unwrapped presents, books, art supplies, clothing, each tagged with my age and the occasion. 8 years' worth of thoughtfulness that had never reached me. Some are from me, some from Claire, some from your grandparents. Before they passed, Kieran acknowledged, we kept hoping that someday, he didn't need to finish, someday had finally arrived. "Speaking of family," he said, changing the subject, "your mother called earlier. She has an interview next week. Assistant art teacher at a private elementary school." "That's fantastic," I exclaimed. "She didn't tell me she was applying for jobs already." Kieran smiled. "She wanted it to be a surprise in case it didn't work out, but the headmaster is an old friend of mine, and he was impressed with her portfolio." I hesitated, uncertain how to respond to the ongoing cooperation between my parents. Their relationship defied easy categorization. Not romantic, not merely cordial, but something uniquely their own. Do you think you and Mom will ever... You... No, I gestured vaguely, unable to articulate the question fully. Kieran understood anyway. Get back together. He considered this thoughtfully as he turned down the heat on his curry. Honestly, I don't know. What happened between us? It's complicated. There's a lot of water under that bridge. But you don't hate her, I observed. Even after everything with Conrad, the restraining order, keeping me from you. No, I don't hate her, he confirmed. Anger doesn't serve anyone, especially when it's directed at someone you once loved. Your mother made mistakes, serious ones, but she's paying for them in her own way, and she's working hard to rebuild herself. And rebuild her relationship with me, I added. Kieran nodded. That, most of all, give her time, Jessica. She's finding her way. Back, not just to you, but to herself. The wisdom in his words struck me, as it often did. Kieran never pushed for forgiveness or reconciliation, never imposed timetables on healing. He simply offered perspective, then gave me space to find my own path. Now, he said, lightening the mood, are you going to help me with this curry? Or should I admit defeat and order takeout before I poison us? Or, I laughed, joining him at the stove, let me see what you've done so far. As we cooked together, talking easily about our days, I marveled at how quickly this had become normal. This sense of family, of connection, of belonging. The wounds Conrad had inflicted weren't fully healed, perhaps they never would be, but they no longer defined me. That night, as Claire regaled us with embarrassing stories about teenage Kieran and shared photos that made him groan with mortification, I felt the last pieces of my old identity falling away. I wasn't Conrad's unwanted stepdaughter anymore. I was Jessica Kieran Monroe, daughter, niece, friend, a person connected to others by bonds of love and choice rather than obligation. Later, helping Kieran clear the dishes while Claire stepped out to take a call, I found the courage to ask the question that had been lingering in my mind for weeks. Do you ever wish you'd fought harder, to find me sooner? Kieran set down the plate he was rinsing, giving the question the consideration it deserved. Every day, he admitted quietly. I second-guessed every decision, wondered if I should have pushed harder, broken the law, done whatever it took. But the restraining order was ironclad. If I'd violated it, I could have lost any chance of ever seeing you legally. He turned to face me fully, his expression earnest. But what I regret most isn't what I did or didn't do. It's that you spent those years believing you weren't wanted. That's the part that keeps me awake at night. I nodded, understanding at last the depth of pain we'd both carried, different perspectives on the same wound. We can't get those years back, I said. But we're here now. We're here now, Kieran agreed, the simple phrase becoming our shared mantra of healing. As Claire returned, bringing laughter and light with her, I realized that bridges were being built all around me, between past and present, between broken pieces and new foundations, and I was no longer afraid to cross them. 1 year later, the envelope sat on my desk, cream-colored and heavy with possibility. The Harvard crest in the corner seemed to gleam in the afternoon sunlight filtering through my bedroom window. I'd been staring at it for nearly an hour, afraid to open it, afraid not to. A soft knock at my door broke the standoff. Still having a staring contest with the letter? Kieran asked, leaning against the doorframe. What if it's a rejection? I blurted out, giving voice to the fear that had kept me frozen. Kieran shrugged, utterly unconcerned. Then you'll go to one of the other excellent schools that have already accepted you. Yale, Brown, Columbia, you have options, Jessica. But Harvard is in Boston, it's close to home. To you, I didn't say, though I knew he heard it anyway. He crossed the room, sitting beside me on the edge of the bed. Home isn't a place, it's people. Wherever you go, you'll still have me, your mother, Claire, Emily, all of us cheering you on. The simple truth of it steadied me. You're right, I said, reaching for the envelope. Besides, Kieran added with a mischievous glint, I own real estate in New Haven too, and New York, and Providence. I rolled my eyes, smiling despite myself. You're impossible. I'm thorough, he corrected. Now open the damn letter before I do it for you. With trembling fingers, I broke the seal and unfolded the single sheet inside. The first word leapt out at me. Congratulations. I got in, I whispered. Then louder. I got in. Kieran's whoop of joy echoed through the house as he swept me into a bear hug, lifting me clean off my feet. I knew it. I told you they'd be crazy not to take you. We need to call Mom, I said as he set me down, my mind racing ahead. And Emily and Claire already texted them to come over for dinner, Kieran confessed, not looking remotely guilty. I had a feeling today might be worth celebrating. You were that confident. In you? Always. His faith, in me, unwavering from the first moment we'd reconnected, still had the power to heal places inside me I hadn't realized were wounded. Later that evening, our dining room filled with the people who had become my constellation of support over the past year. My mother arrived first, proudly carrying a cake she'd baked herself, a small act of domestic independence that would have been impossible under Conrad's controlling reign. To Harvard's newest literary genius, she toasted, raising her glass of sparkling cider. She looked younger somehow, the haunted shadows gone from her eyes. The teaching position had given her purpose. The small apartment had given her space to rediscover herself. Our relationship had healed gradually, through countless coffee dates and difficult conversations, through tears and tentative laughter, and mutual forgiveness. Emily came next, bringing her parents who had become surrogate family during the darkest days after Conrad. They had opened their home to me when I was adrift, and now they shared unreservedly in my triumph. I'm still expecting free Harvard sweatshirts, Emily declared, hugging me fiercely. Best friend privileges. Claire arrived with her new boyfriend, a soft-spoken ornithologist she'd met on a conservation project. She'd moved to Boston 3 months ago, taking a position at the Franklin Park Zoo that allowed her to be closer to her newfound niece. "Did my brother cry when you opened the letter?" she asked with her characteristic directness. "He totally cried when he called me." "I did not cry," Kieran protested from across the room. "There was something in my eye." "Yeah, tears," Claire shot back, grinning. Their easy banter had become the soundtrack of our family gatherings, a reminder that love and laughter could coexist with past pain. As we settled around the table, passing dishes and sharing news, I felt a profound sense of rightness, of pieces long scattered finally coming together. The journey hadn't been easy or straightforward. There had been setbacks and difficult days, moments when the weight of the past threatened to overwhelm the promise of the future. Conrad had made one final attempt to reassert control, filing a vindictive lawsuit that had ultimately been dismissed but had reopened wounds still raw from healing. My mother had struggled with guilt and shame that sometimes left her unable to meet my eyes. I had battled nightmares and trust issues that made accepting love, even when freely offered, a daily choice rather than an instinct. But tonight, looking around at these faces illuminated by candlelight and genuine joy, I knew we had built something stronger than Conrad's bitterness could ever destroy. After dinner, as the others moved to the living room for coffee, Kieran drew me aside, handing me a small velvet box. "I was saving this for graduation," he said, "but tonight seems right." Inside was a delicate silver pendant, a bridge spanning 2 pillars, crafted with intricate detail. "It's beautiful," I said, lifting it from its cushion. "What does it represent?" "Connection," Kieran replied. "The bridge between past and present, between who we were and who we're becoming. I had it made specially for you." As he fastened it around my neck, I thought about all the bridges we'd built and crossed this past year, me and my father, me and my mother, my parents with each other. Even the broken bridge of Conrad's influence had been dismantled piece by piece, its toxic remnants cleared away to make room for healthier foundations. Later that night, after everyone had gone and the house had settled into peaceful quiet, I stood by my bedroom window, looking out at the city that had witnessed my transformation. Boston sparkled beneath a canopy of stars, familiar and beloved from this vantage point that had become home. Home. The word had such different meaning now than it had a year ago, no longer a place of tension and fear, of walking on eggshells and bracing for the next cutting remark. Home had become people who celebrated my successes without resentment, who supported my dreams without condition, who loved me not despite my flaws, but with full acknowledgement of my whole, imperfect self. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "So proud of you. Brunch tomorrow to plan dorm shopping." Then another from Emily. "Harvard girl. We're going to rule Boston next." "Yeah." And one from Claire. "Don't let my brother boast too much about your acceptance. His ego barely fits through doors as it is." Each message a thread in the tapestry of connection that had been woven around me since that stormy night when a black car had stopped inches from where I stood, lost and drenched and clutching a plastic bag of clothes. I touched the bridge pendant at my throat, thinking of Kieran's words. The bridge between past and present, between who we were and who we're becoming. Conrad had intended that plastic bag as my ending. Instead, it had become my beginning. The grocery bag itself was long gone, its contents either donated or integrated into my new life. But I'd kept one thing from that night, the blue dress I'd been wearing, now cleaned and preserved in the fire, back of my closet, not as a reminder of humiliation, but as testament to resilience, to the girl who had walked out into the storm rather than endure another moment of cruelty, to the moment when everything had changed. I typed one last message before turning in for the night, sending it to Kieran down the hall. "Thank you for finding me." His response came almost immediately. "Thank you for being found." Some wounds never fully heal, they simply become part of our story, scars that mark where we've been, but not necessarily where we're going. Conrad's cruelty had marked me, yes, but it hadn't defined me. What defined me now was the love that had searched for me, waited for me, celebrated me. The truth that had set me free from lies, the courage to walk out of one life and into another. Chinchitu, the night I became an adult, my stepfather had exposed his cruelty with a plastic bag and cruel words, but in doing so, he had unknowingly opened the door to everything I'd been missing, my true father, my authentic self, my real home. Sometimes, the things meant to break us become the very things that set us free. Sometimes, what looks like an ending is really just the beginning of a better story. And as I finally drifted towards sleep, the Harvard acceptance letter on my desk and the bridge pendant warm against my skin, I knew with bone-deep certainty that I had found my way home, not to a place, but to belonging, not to perfection, but to truth, not to the past, but to a future bright with possibility. I was Jessica Kieran Monroe. I was wanted. I was loved. I was home.